Welcome to Lives Remembered, where Margaret honors the stories of extraordinary people whose lives left a meaningful mark on the world. This channel reflects on cherished figures from film, music, culture, and beyond, remembering their achievements, their influence, and the legacy they created. Together, we celebrate their memory and the lasting inspiration they continue to leave behind. Wally Funk, a true pioneer in aviation and space exploration, has died at the age of 87. She passed away on July 8, 2026, at her home in Grapevine, Texas, leaving behind an extraordinary legacy that inspired generations. Funk broke barriers throughout her career, becoming one of the women who pushed for greater opportunities in aviation and space. She was also part of the Mercury 13, a group of women who trained to demonstrate that women could meet the demanding standards expected of astronauts, even though they were never officially sent into space through that program. In 2021, Funk finally reached space aboard Blue Origin's New Shepard spacecraft at the age of 82. The flight made her the oldest person ever to travel to space at that time, surpassing astronaut John Glenn's previous record. More than a record holder, Funk represented determination, curiosity, and the courage to keep pursuing a dream for decades. Her remarkable journey continues to remind people that it is never too late to chase something extraordinary. Nedra Tally Ross lived a remarkable life that took her from the streets of New York City to the heights of music fame and, eventually, to a quieter life centered on faith and family. Born in Manhattan in 1946, Nedra discovered her love of singing as a young girl. Alongside her cousins Ronnie and Estelle Bennett, she helped form the Ronettes, a group that became one of the most influential girl groups of its era. Their unforgettable sound and distinctive style captured audiences around the world, and they even toured with the Beatles in 1966. After leaving the group in the late 1960s, Nedra chose a very different path. She embraced Christianity, married Scott Ross, and raised a family of 4 children. She continued making music, later recording Christian songs that reflected her new outlook on life. In 2007, the Ronettes were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Nedra passed away on April 26 at age 80, leaving behind a lasting musical legacy and a story of faith, family, and personal transformation. Today, we remember Monte Coleman, a respected football player, coach, and mentor whose life was defined by dedication, discipline, and leadership. Born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas, on November 4, 1957, Coleman developed his talents through hard work and determination. He went on to play college football at the University of Central Arkansas, where his intelligence, tackling ability, and steady approach caught the attention of professional scouts. In 1979, he was selected by Washington, beginning a remarkable 16-season NFL career with the franchise. Coleman became known for his consistency, toughness, and deep understanding of the game, playing an important role during one of the team's most successful eras. After his playing days, he continued giving back to football through coaching and mentoring at the University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. There, he helped young athletes develop not only as players, but also as people. Coleman's story is a reminder that true greatness is often built quietly, through years of commitment, service, and the positive influence we leave on others. Activist Mary Morello, a passionate supporter of music, free expression, and young people, died on July 12, 2026, at the age of 102. She is being remembered for her remarkable life and for the important role she played in defending artistic freedom. In 1987, Morello founded Parents for Rock and Rap, an organization that challenged attempts to place restrictions on popular music. Through her work, she encouraged parents and communities to understand music and its cultural impact, rather than simply judging it by controversy surrounding particular songs. Morello was also widely known as the mother of guitarist Tom Morello, a founding member of Rage Against the Machine. She proudly supported her son's musical career and became a familiar presence at the band's performances, where she would sometimes introduce them to the audience. Her energy and commitment remained inspiring well into her later years. Mary Morello leaves behind a legacy that connects family, music, activism, and the belief that young people should have the freedom to express themselves creatively. Loy Irvin, a beloved Los Angeles Rams great and two-time Pro Bowl player, died July 1, 2026, at age 68. He spent most of his 11-year NFL career with the Rams, where he became known for his speed, instincts, and ability to change a game in an instant. Irvin made his biggest mark as both a cornerback and punt returner, earning Pro Bowl honors at two different positions. One of his most memorable performances came in 1981 against the Atlanta Falcons, when he returned 6 punts for an incredible 207 yards, a single-game NFL record that still stands. He also finished his career as the Rams' franchise leader in non-offensive touchdowns, a reflection of how often he found a way to make something happen with the ball in his hands. Beyond the statistics, Irvin was remembered by former teammates as a warm, energetic, and loyal friend. His impact reached well beyond the field, leaving behind a lasting place in Rams history and the memories of those who knew him best. Actor Hal Williams, a familiar and beloved face in American television and film, has passed away at the age of 91. Williams died at his home in Rancho Mirage, California, leaving behind a career that entertained audiences for decades. He was especially remembered for his role as Lester Jenkins on the popular sitcom 227, where he played the husband of Mara Gibbs's character. His warm presence and natural comedic timing made him a memorable part of the series. Williams also became widely recognized for playing Officer Smitty on Sanford and Son, another classic television series that remains fondly remembered by generations of viewers. Beyond those iconic roles, he appeared in films and television projects including Private Benjamin and The Sinbad Show, along with many other productions throughout his long career. While audiences will remember him for the characters he brought to life, colleagues and fans will also remember the personality and charm he brought to every performance. Hal Williams leaves behind a remarkable body of work and a legacy that will continue to introduce his talent to new audiences for years to come. Former Idaho Governor Dirk Kempthorne has died at 74, closing a remarkable chapter in a career devoted to public service. From Idaho politics to the U.S. Senate, and eventually the position of U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Kempthorne became a familiar and respected figure in American public life. Known for his calm approach and ability to connect with people, he remained closely associated with Idaho throughout his career. Governor Brad Little honored his memory by ordering flags across the state to be flown at half-staff, recognizing Kempthorne's lasting contribution to Idaho. His passing also came on the same day as the commissioning of the USS Idaho, a moment that carried special meaning because Kempthorne had supported the effort behind the vessel's connection to the state. What should have been a day of celebration therefore became a more reflective moment for many. Friends, colleagues, and family remembered Kempthorne as someone who cared deeply about public service and made people feel respected and valued. His legacy will continue through the people he served and the impact he left on Idaho and the nation. For decades, millions of Americans knew Jay Leno as the man who could make an ordinary night feel lighter. From behind the desk of The Tonight Show, he became one of the most recognizable faces in American television, a performer whose steady voice and familiar humor turned late-night television into a national ritual. But the image of the tireless comedian concealed a life shaped by struggle long before fame ever found him. Leno's story began far from Hollywood, in a modest family where money was limited and perseverance was expected. As a child, he struggled with dyslexia, endured the frustration of falling behind in school, and discovered that laughter could become a refuge when words refused to cooperate. That early discovery would eventually shape the career that made him famous. Yet success never erased the hardships that came before it. He would face rejection, financial uncertainty, exhausting work, intense professional pressure, and later a series of frightening accidents and painful family losses. Even at 75, the man who spent decades making other people laugh has continued to confront challenges away from the spotlight. His life is therefore more than a story about television success. It is a story about endurance, about what happens when someone repeatedly gets knocked down and decides that falling is not the same thing as staying there. A difficult beginning. Jay Leno was born on April 28, 1950, in New Rochelle, New York, into a working-class family that understood sacrifice better than luxury. His father, Angelo, worked as an insurance salesman, while his mother, Catherine, was a Scottish immigrant whose warmth and steadiness helped hold the family together. Jay grew up alongside his older brother, Patrick, and although the household did not have much money, it provided something more important: discipline, affection, and an expectation that effort mattered. After the family moved to Andover, Massachusetts, however, school became a difficult battlefield. Leno struggled with dyslexia, and reading did not come easily. Letters seemed to move, sentences refused to settle, and assignments that appeared simple to other children could become exhausting obstacles for him. Teachers could see the struggle, but they could not always see the determination underneath it. The experience left Jay feeling different, and at times, isolated. Yet somewhere inside that frustration, comedy began to emerge. When he could make classmates or teachers laugh, the pressure seemed to loosen. Humor gave him a way to communicate when conventional education made him feel powerless. It was not initially about becoming famous. It was about finding a place where he could breathe. The boy who struggled to read eventually discovered that he could make a room listen, learning to survive. When Jay entered adulthood, the obstacles did not disappear. In 1968, he left Andover High School and eventually attended Emerson College in Boston, studying speech therapy while quietly pursuing the dream that had already begun taking shape inside him. Comedy was becoming more than an escape, it was becoming a direction, but pursuing that dream required surviving circumstances that were anything but glamorous. Leno worked a series of jobs to keep himself moving, including delivering pizzas and working around automobiles. Money remained painfully tight. There were periods when he struggled to cover basic expenses and even slept in his car. Those nights were far removed from the bright television studios he would one day inhabit. Boston winters brought bitter cold, and the young comedian had little protection from it. Yet hardship also taught him something that would become central to his identity: consistency. He learned that talent meant very little if you were unwilling to show up again after failure. At just 23, he opened a small comedy club and began performing wherever someone would give him a microphone. The rooms were often smoky, the audiences unpredictable, and the opportunities scarce. Sometimes his jokes landed, sometimes they disappeared into silence. Doors closed in his face, club owners dismissed him, and there were moments when doubt became almost unbearable. But every rejection became another test. Instead of asking whether the world believed in him, Leno gradually learned to ask whether he was willing to continue without that belief. The first break. By the 1970s, Jay Leno had transformed persistence into a profession. He continued performing stand-up, moving from small clubs toward increasingly important stages, refining the conversational style and observational humor that would eventually become his trademark. Then came a breakthrough that changed the trajectory of his career. In 1977, Leno appeared on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. For a young comedian who had spent years struggling for stage time, the opportunity was enormous. Standing beneath those studio lights, he was no longer performing for a handful of people in a basement club. He was appearing before one of the biggest audiences in American television. The moment could easily have overwhelmed him, but Leno delivered. The appearance helped establish him as a serious stand-up comedian and opened doors that had previously seemed unreachable. Still, the breakthrough did not mean the struggle was finished. During the 1980s, Leno continued working relentlessly, performing stand-up while building his television presence. He became a frequent guest on The Tonight Show and eventually earned the position of permanent guest host in 1986. To the outside world, this looked like the arrival of a successful entertainer. Inside, Leno understood that every opportunity could disappear. He had spent too many years being underestimated to take security for granted. The boy who once struggled to read a page had become a performer capable of holding an entire room in silence before delivering a punchline. The chair. In 1992, one of the most important moments in Jay Leno's career arrived when he succeeded Johnny Carson as host of The Tonight Show. It was an enormous responsibility, and the transition became even more complicated because David Letterman, another major figure in late-night television, had been widely viewed as a possible successor. The change created tension throughout the entertainment industry, with media coverage turning the succession into a contest between two very different personalities. Leno, however, largely responded the way he always had, by working. He inherited a legendary chair and knew that comparisons with Carson would be unavoidable. Every monologue, every interview, and every ratings report could become evidence for critics who questioned whether he belonged there. But gradually, viewers accepted his style. His approach was less edgy than Letterman's and built around accessible humor, celebrity interviews, topical jokes, and a sense of familiarity. Night after night, he became a reliable presence in American homes. At the height of his Tonight Show years, millions watched regularly. Yet the enormous success carried its own pressure. Leno was known for maintaining a punishing work ethic and continued performing stand-up even while hosting the show. His television career could have provided more than enough money and recognition, but he continued appearing in comedy clubs because he never wanted to lose the connection with live audiences. The discipline formed during his difficult youth had become permanent. Success had not changed his instinct to work. If anything, it had intensified it. The final goodbye. After 22 years behind the desk, Jay Leno eventually faced the moment every television host knows is coming: the final goodbye. In February 2014, he hosted The Tonight Show for the last time, bringing an extraordinary chapter to a close. The farewell carried an emotional weight that few viewers expected from a man whose career had been built around making other people laugh. Leno spoke about the years he had spent on the program and described them as among the best of his life. The applause reflected more than television ratings. It represented the relationship that had formed between a performer and an audience over decades. Viewers had watched him age, watched their own families change, and returned night after night to the familiar rhythm of his monologue. For many, Leno was not simply a host. He was part of the background of their lives. Yet leaving the desk did not mean Leno was ready to stop working. Stand-up remained central to his identity, and he continued performing long after his television tenure ended. His departure demonstrated an important truth about his personality. The desk had never been the entirety of his career. It was one chapter in a much longer story. He had started as a struggling young comedian, with little money, and no guarantee that anyone would ever listen. Decades later, he could walk away from one of the most famous chairs in television, knowing that he had earned his place there, without allowing the chair to become his entire identity. Another battle. The years after The Tonight Show brought a different kind of challenge. Leno's life became increasingly associated not only with comedy but also with his extraordinary passion for automobiles. He had accumulated an extensive collection of cars and motorcycles and became known for his knowledge of engines and mechanical history. That passion, however, also placed him in situations where accidents could happen. In recent years, Leno suffered multiple serious incidents that shocked the public. In 2022, he sustained severe burns in a gasoline fire while working on one of his vehicles. The injuries required medical treatment and reconstructive procedures, but he recovered and returned to public life. Then, in January 2023, another accident left him with multiple broken bones after a motorcycle incident. Once again, the public watched as a familiar figure faced an ordeal that could have permanently altered his life. Yet Leno responded with the same resilience that had defined him since childhood. He did not present himself as invincible. Instead, he approached recovery with patience and determination. The accidents offered a stark contrast to the image audiences had carried for decades. The man who appeared endlessly energetic on television was still human, vulnerable to the same physical dangers as anyone else. What remained remarkable was his refusal to let those injuries become the final definition of his story. He recovered, returned to performing, and continued pursuing the mechanical passions that had always given him another world beyond television. Losses that cut deeper. Physical injuries were painful, but they were not the only hardships Jay Leno faced away from the cameras. Some losses cannot be repaired through surgery, rehabilitation, or determination. The death of loved ones can leave an absence that no career can fill. Leno experienced profound family grief as cancer claimed 3 beloved family members in relatively close succession. For someone who had spent his entire professional life giving audiences reasons to smile, private grief represented a completely different kind of challenge. There is no punchline capable of making that kind of pain disappear. There is no television audience waiting to applaud. There is simply the quiet reality of losing people whose presence had been woven into a lifetime. Those losses also placed his own life in a different perspective. The boy raised by parents who taught him discipline and compassion had become an older man confronting the fragility of the people around him. Fame could provide resources, influence, and comfort, but it could not negotiate with mortality. That truth is especially difficult for someone who had built an identity around endurance. You can fight an accident. You can fight exhaustion. You can fight rejection. But grief asks something different. It asks you to continue living while carrying what cannot be restored. For Leno, the lesson was painfully familiar. Resilience does not mean remaining untouched by suffering. It means learning how to carry the damage without allowing it to erase everything that still remains. What remains? At 75, Jay Leno stands in a very different place from the young man who once slept in a car and wondered whether anyone would ever give him a stage. His career has already secured his place in television history, but the most revealing part of his story may not be the awards, ratings, money, or famous guests. It may be the persistence that connects every chapter. The child who struggled with dyslexia learned to communicate through humor. The young man without financial security learned to survive through relentless work. The comedian rejected by clubs learned to keep returning. The television host who inherited a legendary chair learned to withstand comparison. The star who endured professional upheaval learned that fame could disappear, but discipline could remain. And the older man who suffered serious accidents and devastating personal losses learned another version of the same lesson. Survival is not about avoiding pain. It is about continuing after pain has arrived. Leno's automobile collection, stand-up performances, television appearances, and public persona may all be visible parts of his life, but beneath them lies something quieter. He has repeatedly refused to let circumstances make the final decision about who he is. The world once saw a struggling boy and underestimated him. Decades later, that same boy's stubborn determination had become the defining characteristic of one of America's most recognizable entertainers. Beyond the applause, the story of Jay Leno ultimately reaches far beyond late-night television. It is about a man who spent his life turning adversity into momentum, then using laughter to give something back to people who had no idea what was happening behind the smile. His journey was never as effortless as the television screen suggested. Beneath the familiar jokes were years of rejection, financial hardship, relentless work, professional uncertainty, frightening accidents, and personal grief. Yet none of those experiences erased the central quality that carried him forward from childhood: persistence. Leno's greatest achievement may not be that he became the host of The Tonight Show. It may be that he became the kind of person who could survive losing the very thing he had once spent his life trying to reach. When the desk disappeared, he kept performing. When injuries forced him to recover, he kept moving. When grief entered his family, he continued carrying the memories of those he loved, and when the applause faded, his identity remained. For generations, Jay Leno helped Americans end difficult days with laughter. But perhaps the deeper lesson of his life is found in what happened when the cameras were gone. The boy who once felt invisible never stopped moving toward the light. The comedian who learned to use humor as a shield eventually turned it into a gift. And the man who spent decades telling the world that tomorrow could be funny proved something far more powerful. Sometimes resilience is simply waking up, carrying everything you've lost, and choosing to keep going.